Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today, I have the pleasure of having my man, Viktor Jiracek, dialing in from Gainesville, Florida. If you're listening to this, we are here in the lab with Viktor. And what's really interesting about Viktor, I was talking about this offline, Viktor, because, we got, just talking offline, getting ready to get the show started. And then I looked and I'm like, hey, man, I appreciate you for asking how can I best serve the audience. And my answer to you was, listen, but you being a practitioner and experimenter, right? You're a good example of what an experimenter is, because you have such diverse background, but then you really doubled down in as being what we call a six-figure house flipper, which is now a brand that you're helping others do the same. But you are a fix and flipper out of Gainesville, Florida. You've done over 20 flips. Of your goal is to do a lot more this year, very ambitious. So that gives you about like 1 to 2 a month. So that's incredible. We can't wait to get into that. But at the same time, I looked and I'm like, because our team does the work. They did a homework. They did a little background check. We look, and you actually come from you've tried a lot of different things, it appears to me, from the seller financing, long-term, short-term rental, which I was telling you we're a part of. So I got to ask you, first of all, I got to welcome you to the lab for coming into the lab. But then I got to ask you, man, what came first into your world?
No, for sure. And thanks for having me, by the way. But
absolutely.
So what came first? So I actually did wholesaling first, believe it or not. So did wholesaling on my first deal. I made about 3,000. Second one made about 3,500. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with wholesaling. It's just like, it wasn't like my niche.
When you start off by saying that, that's trouble. When you say there's nothing wrong with it, but what's the big but? We want to hear it. What is it?
So with the wholesaling, it was always like I was kind of the middleman always. So I'd have to find a seller, okay, negotiate. And then I'd find a cash buyer, like an investor. Like the investor always wants a good deal. So they always like beat me up over the price. And I was always like this middleman. So I had like two parties I had to keep promises for. So that I didn't like that too much. And then like the spreads weren't that big. So you have to do lots of volume, so again, made 3,000, 3,500. On the second one. I think typical wholesale fee is about $5,000, maybe $7,000. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then the thing was, like, I would turn it over to these investors and then they would make, 20, 30, 40,000 on the flips. And I was like, that's where I want to be. I just want to take it down myself. I don't want to have to be this middleman. I just want to, make it happen on my own. And that's kind of how I, doubled down on this. And I tried some other things in the meantime, but just really fell in love with the fix and flipping.
All right, and just to give our listeners or watchers some context here, because you're 27, so you're hella young, and you're actually very similar to where some of our listeners talked about this. I actually didn't mention this before, but we're anywhere in the sweet spot between 25 to 44. The majority of us as experimenters. So for you, what was you talked about what you started with, but what was the catalyst to just being able to say, hey, I want to start wholesaling? Is there something that influenced you because you're 27, you've been doing this for a little bit now? So what was that when most kids are still trying to figure out what they're trying to do? How did you know you wanted to even start in real estate?
Yeah, so I realized like what I didn't want to do, and I was I was working a job back then. It's like 3-4 years ago. I was a home health administrator, like helping run a little home health company, and that's basically like when someone gets sick, like we'd send like a caretaker or a caregiver or a nurse, to their house just to help them recover. So that's what I was doing, and then I realized like I didn't like the work. It wasn't that I hated it; it was just like it just didn't inspire me. So that was the first part of it. Second part of it, like it wasn't that lucrative. Like I would, have my bills, make my money, at the end of the month, and I have like extra $500, $1,000 left over, and I had higher financial goals for myself. So I quickly realized, like, wait a second, this just isn't working. Like I need to do more. I need to make a change, or else I'm just going to stay where I'm at. And always had that like little real estate bug. Always had that in the back of my head. And the thing was, it was always like, okay, let me do this first thing. And then the next thing after that is going to be real estate. So for the home health, it's like, I'm going to, build my own home health company, sell it, and then I'm going to go into real estate.
Oh, that's so interesting. Wait. Hold on. I got to stop you there. This is great because the reason I like this is that's how I've always looked at real estate. Like I'm a big, it's funny because there's a lot of people that way. It's important to be clear on how people got into real estate, because some people use real estate to preserve wealth.
Right.
And some people use it as a vehicle. And so and when I say a vehicle, it's creating a business within real estate. Some have businesses, they sell businesses and then pour it into real estate. So I have a business and I use that to, pour it into real estate. But for you, you said something interesting. You were thinking, and it's very similar to what I was thinking, and to maybe some of what the listeners are, which is our avatar, is business owners, entrepreneurs. So you're thinking of building something else and then doing real estate. Yeah. What made real estate end up becoming the vehicle? Why did that happen?
Yeah, at a certain point, because it was always like me trying to convince others to do real estate. And it's at a certain point, I'm like, I just need to do this thing. Like I'm just talking about it all the time. And like, I want others to do it, but I was really just projecting my own wants, like projecting what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into it. So at a certain point, I just realized like, hey, I just need to do this because it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, I do X and then do Y. Like, why not just do Y? I just had some like beliefs around the real estate. Oh, wait a second, I need money to do real estate. And that's right. I kind of later found out like, well, I mean, you doesn't need to be your own money. Like you need money. It can be other people's money. It doesn't have to be your own. So it was just kind of some mindset shifts and just realizing like where I was at wasn't getting me where I wanted to go.
Got it. So then after that, so what was, you said you started wholesaling.
Yes.
And that was more of like, hey, let me just get my foot in or see if I like it. Or was that just like, did you know you were going to get into flipping, or was it more like, let me just get some traction in something and then see what's next? I gotta ask you, what was happening behind the mind?
Yeah, it was mostly like, I want to get into real estate. Yeah. I had no clue if I would like wholesaling or not like wholesaling. I just like, hey, I just want to do this. I basically jumped in and made it happen. And then just realized like, as I get into it, was like an evolutionary process. Like at least for me, like I got into it, I was like, okay, well, I like this part of it, this part of this part of it, but I don't like this part of it. Like, what can I do to improve that? It's like, okay, well, what if I take down my own deals? It's like, okay, if I take down my own deals, then I'm fixing flipping. Like, okay, now I need to solve this problem, right? So it's like a lot of self-awareness and like self-analysis. Like, okay, I like X, Y, and Z. I don't like B. Let me change B. So it was just like a natural progression, basically.
Let me ask you, because it's like you've been doing your homework or something. You're saying all these key things that we always talk about. Like, first of all, I love how you said evolutionary, because that's literally what it is. Like, you can't just know that you're gonna be good at this one thing or even like it. You gotta like start with one thing and then it'll lead to another, and we call it an experiment, and then you double down on the one that works, which we'll get to in a second, because that's where we're here today. But that self-awareness, were you always where did you get the self-awareness from? Was it a coach? Was it reading? Was it kind of like, how did you tap into that? Because I think that's something that doesn't get talked about often, of being aware. We hear it, but like, what did it look like for you? Forget the others. Tell us
I'd say it's all of the above, just like mentors and like reading and just me and my personality. That's part of my background. Like before all this was school, was I went to school for engineering, so I think that was part of it too.
Oh,
like,
you're an engineer.
Business as a machine, like you get input, you get an output. If the machine is making noise, you got to check on the machine and see what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a choppy process or whatever. So is that sort of like thinking that got me to where I'm at.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So tell us about the evolution, because I think can you talk a little bit about the other stuff that you stumbled upon when you were doing wholesaling, and what was the transition? We're gonna get to the goods in a second. I gotta warm you guys up here. Hold on. So what was that? Was there a next evolution that came after wholesaling, or was there maybe other pieces as well that came prior? Like I see there's seller financing, long-term rentals. Like where did that fall into the evolution process?
Yeah, sure. So went from the 2 wholesale deals, and then for the third one, basically what happened was like, okay, I found this good deal. What I thought was a good deal. I couldn't wholesale it. I couldn't find any buyers. And this was like 2018 in Gainesville. So it wasn't really that much developed as a market. So a lot of people wanted home run deals. They wanted like, I want to, buy 60 cents on the dollar, which now people typically fall like 70%. Well, we can get into all of that, but they wanted a home run deals. Like they were going to make, 50 grand plus on this little house flip. And I basically decided like, okay, well, I can't find a buyer because the price is too off. Like, what if I just take it down myself? And then that's basically what I did. I didn't have any money. I had like maybe like a low 500 credit score, maybe a couple thousand in the bank. And basically what I did, found a money partner. They put in the money to buy it, to fix it up, to sell it. And then I would like help manage the project and find the deal, obviously. And then we'd split the profit. So that's like the next evolution. Like, okay, I got this good deal and I don't want to let the seller down. So let me, figure out something else. Then after that, after the flip, I tried some other stuff. I tried like the burr, I tried like the short-term rental. But that was after I got a little more momentum with the flipping, got 2-3, flips under the belt. Then it was like, okay, well, let's try this other stuff. And then the other stuff is fine, but just like, hey, let's just stick to the flipping because that's really working. And just, continue to make it happen.
That's key right there. Working. There's I'm going to get to that in a second, but partner. I know I was big on bigger pockets when I first started doing my own little masterminds and meetups and stuff like that, and kind of foster some relationships. To somebody else who's listening, how did you find that first partner, and to be able to kind of pull on that first deal?
Well, I think folks would be pleasantly surprised, like within their own network, like friends and family and like just extended network, like how many people have money sitting in the bank and they don't know what to do with it, or they want to put it to work. They're not satisfied with like 0.1% returns sitting in the bank. They want to, put it actively to use. And a lot of people are interested in real estate. They just don't know how to get started. So if you can be that vehicle, like, hey, I've got this great deal. Hey, I want to, make this happen. Let's partner on this together. You'd be surprised how many folks are willing to go with you, are willing to invest with you. And then if you could show them the deal, like, hey, this is the deal, this is how much we're buying it for, this is how much we need to put into it, this is how much we can sell it for. Like, hey, this is your portion. You're kind of selling the benefit. Like, hey, invest in this deal and you can make 15K or you can make 20K would be your portion. And you'll see like the wheels are going to start turning. Like, okay, do I want to keep it in the bank or do I want to, put it in this asset, which is real estate, and it's shown to be, secure and it's tangible and it's, it's something they can use their money with. And then obviously they know you on some level. So it's like, okay, well, I trust this person on some level and, just want to make it happen.
I love that because you're touching on a lot of important things that, it's the numbers you talked about. You have to lead with the results, right? Kind of show, hey, this is, people are thinking, what can this do for me, right? And so being able to kind of show them that transformation is key. I love you said that. And then you said trust, which AKA we talk about branding, right? So, and branding really is, it's so interesting. I had a gentleman step into the lab, tell me that branding is what people are saying when you're not around in the room. I was like, oh, interesting. I never really thought of it that way, right? Versus marketing is more like active offensive, like, hey, this is what you're telling people. So I thought that was interesting. So now that you have this little nugget as well of hindsight is 2020, like what did you think was strong about your branding of, was it just your work ethic? Was it just, hey, this kid's out here, he's taking the steps to kind of show, take the initiative? Like, what do you think about your branding helped? That way someone who's listening might be like, oh, okay, interesting. This is how I might be able to kind of touch on my branding so that someone can have trust to instill in my next project or have the trust that I'll be a good partner.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the basics, like showing up on time, like doing what you're saying you're going to do, like clear communication, stuff like that. Like even the basics are really key. Like if you're showing up late and like you leave promises unfulfilled and like, you're just not easy to work with, like that's a tough base to, like, even if you have the best brand in the world, like that's really hard to recover from. So a lot of those basics is key. And then I would say just like the numbers on the deal, just like proving like if you get a good enough deal, there's people are going to throw money at you to make it happen. And the numbers should speak for themselves, basically. Because if the numbers work, the numbers work. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like, yes, there's a component of me and making it happen. There's also the component of the deal. So even if Victor falls out, if I fall out and this isn't a deal, like at least I got this great project. Like if you're able to buy a house for, let's say, half off, like, okay, well, the guy who brought me the house, like, yes, he's important, but it's also like I got this house that's half off. So even if you mess everything up, like you can still make money off of it.
Awesome. And I know there's so it doesn't slip through the cracks. You talk about, it doesn't matter if you have the best brand in the world. That is your brand. Being on time. It's all the little unsexy things.
Yes.
That's what success is. Like, it's the little things of like, oh, I said I was going to do this with Victor and send him an email. I'm going to send him an email.
Mhm.
I think that doesn't get as much attention because, people are looking at the, little the front end stuff, not the back end.
Mhm.
So you have an interesting story, and I don't know, I always like to ask because things move so quickly. People can have deals in the pipeline going while they're on the air, but I know that you have a significant flip that you had that was significantly larger, and it didn't necessarily look like that. It's funny, we talk about front end and back end.
Yeah.
It didn't look like what it turned out. You want to talk about that? So give us some context as to what a really good flip might look like, and to build on that, and I'll follow up because I'm double stacking on the question here, but you did talk about the importance of making sure the numbers are still A1 for that investor. So talk to us, walk us through that, maybe that specific deal, and then how you look at other deals to give us some context as a flipper in your market as to how you're analyzing these and how you know that, oh, this is something I got to pull the trigger on.
Yeah, for sure. So happy to get into that specific deal. I think the takeaway is like, and I'll reiterate the story in the lesson, but the biggest thing is like, trust your numbers and trust yourself. So that's it. So basically, as you mentioned, so I did about 20 flips last year, 30 flips this year is the goal. I'm currently on track for that, which is great. One of the flips we did this year, basically we sourced the deal. We were going to take it down. It was in decent shape. It was more outdated more than anything. It needed like it was just a normal house. It needed a new roof, needed like a new HVAC system, like kitchen, flooring, paint, just like, just basic normal stuff. So we bought the house. About a week into it, like there was this like serious mold problem that we kind of I don't know if we overlooked it, but for some reason, like it became an issue like a week or so into it. Like we were trying to clear out the place. I was like, oh, this mold is pretty bad. And the neighbor kind of scared us on the deal, where he was actually, interesting enough, competing with us when we were trying to buy it. Like he was also trying to buy it and trying to outbid us and all that good stuff. And he kind of scared us. He's a mold remediation guy. He's like, hey, there's mold in there. That's going to be really expensive to fix. That's going to be really expensive to take care of. And we're like, oh, shoot, this isn't good. We're dealing with this mold stuff and we don't know what type of mold it is. It might be expensive. He gave us a quote for like 25 grand to fix it up just for the mold remediation. And we're like, oh, shoot, this isn't good. At that point, we almost, almost sold it to him. Like, hey, we'll just sell this place, break even. We just want to get rid of it. We don't want to deal with this mold. We don't want to deal with all these issues.
Mind you, this is coming from the mold specialist.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. I want to see if that comes back full circle.
No, for sure. So basically, luckily, he said no. So as we were like, before we were trying to bid for the same place, like he was trying to buy it from us. And then after we closed on it and owned it for a week or two, we asked him like, hey, would you buy this place from us for like basically break even? He said no. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Looking back, thank goodness we didn't do it. So basically what happened, we actually got a couple more quotes. Another quote came in like for 15 grand. And then we grabbed someone else from like our network in terms of referral. And he was like 8 grand and he got it all done. Just 8,000. So we continued with the renovation, got it all fixed up. Ended up being our best deal ever. We made about 64,000 net profit. So it's after all expenses, but before taxes, we had 64,000 net. And I'm glad that we did. Absolutely glad that we did. We, got the deal done and made it happen. And that guy, actually, the Molder mediator, just to bring it full circle, like you mentioned, like he saw it once we had it all done in stage. He's like, yeah, this is a really nice place. You guys did a really good job. So that's so like trust yourself and trust your numbers. Like even if we paid 25 grand for Molder mediation, like we still would have made 40 grand net, which is huge. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is we kind of let fear overtake it. We're listening to other people instead of listening to ourselves. So you just got to really trust yourself. Like once you're in it, like trust the entire process and then just make it happen. You can always look back like, okay, was there a mistake in my process? You can fix the process, and then you can see the results using that process moving forward. But you don't want to like scare yourself and like change things mid tempo or like in the middle of everything and mess things up.
What's an example? So this is a good example actually, because I know you started by saying the HVAC, the roof, etc. Is there, when you're doing, about a dozen a year or much more? I'm so sorry. I'm trying to do the math in my head. We're talking about 20. You're going to 30, so you're doing more than a dozen. But when you're doing that kind of volume and you're looking at a lot of numbers, how do you assess that, okay, this is the good deal? Because you said, right, that this was, even with the 25K, what is it that you're looking at? You're looking at how you're going to fix it the same as other properties with the same material. Is there something that you go to that gives you kind of a reference point that, okay, this is good, even with all these nuances that may show up? Like, what is it tactically that you can kind of tell us when you're going into this? Yeah.
So it's really like knowing a good deal really comes down to three numbers. It's like, what are you buying it for? What are you putting into it, like repairs or renovation? What are you going to sell it for, like ARV? So that's really all you have to look at, because when you're flipping a house, there's a million variables. Like, okay, what's the bedroom, bathroom? What's the square footage? What's the neighborhood? What's the school district? Is it a dirt road? Is it a paved road? Like, there's a million variables. So just to make it as simple as possible, just break it down to three numbers. So that's what I recommend. And the other thing with that, I do what's called 70% rule. So it's 70% ARV, like 70% what you can sell it for minus repairs, and that's a good deal. So that's typically how I look at it. So it's all the numbers, because that nicely makes it much easier to deal with and think about, versus like all these different variables, all these different things to think through. So just 70% rule is what I teach.
I appreciate that, Victor. What makes you back out of a deal? Because I'm assuming that with the information that we have now on the internet, obviously you got to walk the property. If you're still doing that yourself or someone on your team, I'm assuming that with these three things, you can pretty much do an assessment, kind of, from a distance per se, or even an online assessment. When you get to on site, or maybe your process is completely different, so maybe you can stop me. What makes you say, nah, hell no, nope, doesn't it look right? We're not doing this. What is one thing that you or one or several things that you feel that are no-nos for you?
I think just the numbers is the biggest thing, because it all goes into the numbers. So let's give an example. So let's say like layout, like it's a weird layout. Like you can fix for anything when it comes to flipping or real estate or anything like that. You can fix anything. It's like, what's the dollar amount to fix it? Like, what's the price tag to fix this problem? And like, it's like, and I think of it like, okay, what are the problems? Like, okay, new roof. Like, how much does a new roof cost? Okay, that's problems fixed. How much does a new HVAC cost? Okay, that problem's fixed. So you're just like going down a checklist of problems and fixing all of them. So one of the things that's kind of tricky is layout, because you can like change walls and like change the layout and like add walls, remove walls, but that's pretty expensive. So that just would affect like the repair budget. And I've had to back out of deals for that reason before. Like the layout's weird. And it's like, well, I can't really do much with this if I want to sell it and fix it up and flip it. That story is a little bit different for like rentals or short term and that sort of stuff. But for me, like sometimes the layout can be a deal killer. So that's what I really look at. But it's all affecting like the what you can sell it for, what you need to put into it, that sort of thing. So layout's kind of tricky.
Does a permitting thing come into play as well for layout, or no, not so much in your area?
Kind of sucks to deal with permits, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and it's been more of a hassle recently. But it's all in the numbers. If I have to deal with permits, I don't make 30K, but I make 25K. Like I think that's still a good deal, and I would happen every day.
Awesome. So let's talk about like your team, because I think it's important. One, I can see why you went into this. Definitely, you said a keyword earlier. It was just, mark the demand. Obviously, there's the demand there. And the reason I say that is it's not. I want to connect the dots and see if do what you're passionate about versus doing what is actually a need in the marketplace. So we're always going to need some form of real estate, right? Yes. We're going to need to stay under the roof. We're going to need a place to stay. People are always going to be looking for deals. People are looking for renovations, that whatever the case might be. So for you, earlier when we started the show, we talked about, kind of a lifestyle business. I know you've traveled to over 38 countries. That's huge. How are you able to do this? Is this something that you're doing in simultaneously, because business doesn't stop? Is this something that you're taking some time to do? Is this something that you did prior? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because again, the reason why we do this is to make sure that the experiments that we do are actually enjoying them as well. So how did that come into your world?
Yeah, so kind of all of the above. With Corona, I've kind of slowed it down realistically because I can't go to a lot of places and it's kind of a hassle. So I have to quarantine, for 10 days there, and then 10 days when I get back. It's like at least a month that I have to set aside. But it's kind of all of the above. So I also got, started traveling when I was younger. Also have been doing it with the real estate. What's interesting about like the fix and flip model is it's like a flurry of activity, and then it's like nothing, and it's like a flurry of activity, and then it's like nothing. So it's like, okay, we got this great deal. Okay, we got to sign paperwork. We're gonna do an inspection. We gotta run the numbers, and it's like, okay, well now we have a month to close, and like there's nothing to do. And then suddenly it's closing. They're like, okay, now we gotta get the utilities on. Now we gotta get property insurance. Now we gotta get take care of all these things. And it's like, okay, so during those like in between times that you can take a vacation. And I've also done a vacation, like, okay, well, one of these big projects finally closed, take a little break and then get back into it. So that's kind of been the thing here. Just the only thing is just recently it's been just slower. But yeah, I've gone to quite a few places. We did like Thailand, Myanmar. We did a bit of Europe, did South America. Haven't done Antarctica. That's probably the next one on the list.
Really? What's the thing that's a place that sticks out at you as the like, wow, like I wouldn't have expected it to be like this?
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was really cool, because I mentioned the Myanmar. I don't know if you can go there now. I think they have some unrest, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't keep up to date on their politics. But it was really cool. We went, I think, like 5 years ago, and it was really untouched. So if you go to a lot of places now, like there'll be like a Taco Bell and like a McDonald's, and like there's a lot of tourists. So like you kind of get that cultural mishmash, if you want to think of it that way. But what was cool about Myanmar is like it was mostly untouched. So it was like, okay, I get to experience like this real culture, this real place, and like a lot of it's untouched, and they still have their own traditions and that sort of thing. So that was really cool to experience that. I don't know how it is now. I think they've slowly been opening up, but what was also cool was like they didn't have a lot of tourists. So you would see the same people. So it was like, let's say there's like 50 people, like 50 tourists, like you'd see them in each different city and like, oh, hey, how are you doing?
I ran into you again. That's so
you guys
funny.
again. You don't see that a lot. Like if you go to Hawaii or something like that, like you'll never see someone again because they have, thousands of tourists.
I don't even know that I know where that is. Myanmar? Where is that? Help me out here. I might have to. So it's around and share my screen. Where is it?
Southeast Asia. So kind of near Cambodia, Thailand.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The south of China, if you want to think of it like that.
Jeez. Thailand's been on my list for a minute, man. I'm trying to go before the madness. I have a good business friend and a partner, and that's, he was out there for a while. And I mean, there's tons of places. I definitely want to do Eurasia a little more. Yeah.
What's definitely interesting, I think Thailand's a great start because a lot of like the Asian cultures, like it's so different from what we're used to. Yeah. So I think Thailand is a great, like a middle ground. Like you get into that, you kind of dip your toe in the water, and then you can go to like different cultures, because it is, it's different. They just have a different way of life. So gotta get used to.
You must be so cultured, man. That's what I do like about I mean, being able to see, you talk about awareness in the beginning of our show, and being aware and having exposure to different cultures is just being a little bit more, seeing seeing the world in a different lens. I think that's really important, and it's enlightening. But going back, man. So Victor, so you're doing this, and when you're talking about doing 20 to 30, flips a year, and you talk about kind of like there's some quiet periods. How are you combining the projects? Do you have like one team or multiple contractors working on multiple projects at the same time? I know you're in Gainesville, so that's your market. So how does that look like?
Yeah, so you did ask me that. So in terms of team, in terms of like, let's call it permanent team. So for the flipping, it's a me, I have a project manager, and then I have like an assistant. And that's pretty much it. We use a lot of subcontractors. As soon as we like someone and they do a good job, let's say we have a good painter, like we try to use them as much as possible on all the projects.
Yeah.
Like a good flooring person, like use them as much as possible on all the projects. So that
Yeah.
makes life a lot easier, so they could, fill up their schedule with a lot of our stuff. So there's a lot more like inherent loyalty there, which is good. And it helps them out. They're not the chase jobs. I was talking
Yeah.
to a contractor recently. He's like, hey, I need to do, I think he said like 20 roof quotes to get one or something like that. So they're running around a lot. I think
Jeez.
that was his numbers. Yeah. But they're running around a lot to get one deal or to get one job. But with you, it's like, it's nice and consistent. It's
Oh yeah,
there.
people love that. Contractors love that.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, if you can give them more work, that's always
Mhm.
beneficial. Sometimes even than trying to having to, because that energy and time and everything
Yes.
is what wears them out. So as far as the that's a very lean team. I like that.
Yeah.
That's leaner than I expected. Um, that's really neat. So I guess from a sourcing, where do you source your deals from? Like how are those coming to the pipeline? Do you have like people out there? What do they call them? I feel like there used to be a name for them. Something dog,
This used to be Bird Dog. Yeah.
bird dogs.
They've
I
kind of
haven't.
changed that now. I think they call
Yeah.
it a wholesaler. So I get about half my deals from wholesalers and then
Yeah.
half I source on my own. And wholesalers is kind of like the Bird Dog, like they find you deals
Yeah.
and then you basically pay them to find you deals, which is
Yeah.
basically what I was doing. I was a wholesaler essentially.
Oh yeah, for sure. So interesting. Do you have any closer ties with some wholesalers that you're like their go-to, or do you feel that you have to keep a very broad spectrum when it comes to wholesale deals?
When it comes to the wholesale, interesting enough, when I got started in 2018, there's like one, maybe two, like maybe like say 1.5 in the area, and now there's like 20. And what's interesting, like the original folks, those are the one who are still getting consistent deals, and I get consistent deals from them. But yeah, so that's kind of how I look at that. But a lot of the newer folks, like I think a lot of folks have gotten like sold into like the wholesaling dream. They're like, oh, you can make money on the beach and it's super easy, and no money, no credit, no experience, and they kind of get oversold into this type of thing. And they kind of believe that. So then they just lock up a property and they lock it up for way too high. And then like you gotta talk the seller back to reality. It's like, hey, I need to be at 60. Oh, but someone gave me 100. Well, or they offered you 100, but they weren't able to close on it because it's way too much. So I think that's part of it. I don't know where that rant was going, but
No. We talked about
now.
we talk about sourcing, and one thing you talked about life on the beach. Can we have that? You've had it. What do you need to have that life on the beach? Because I also think it's it's not misleading. Like you can do it, but people I think sometimes are advertising that, oh, there's no such thing. No, there is such a thing. So what does it look like to have that completely hands-off life on the beach, especially in your world when you talk about, if I want to become a flipper, is it doable? How does it look like?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's completely hands off. I mean, you can very much minimize like how much time you put into it. So if I were to just do the flipping, so okay, let's talk about like income goals first. So if you want to hit 6 figures flipping houses, it's basically like 3 or 4 flips per year. So on average, I make about 30K per flip. So it's 3 or 4 flips per year, which is super doable.
And we're talking take home, right? I just want to be clear for our listeners. Yeah, because there's a lot of gross and then net profit.
This is like net. This is like what you can spend money. This is the money you can spend. So you need to do 3 to 4 flips per year. And then when I was at that level and kind of where I'm at now, I'm less than 10 hours a week doing that, just the flipping. So like once you get everything set up and kind of know what you're doing, then you can just let it run. So 10 hours, a week. And I think that's doable to do that on the beach, and I would say like it still helps to be boots on the ground or to have someone boots on the ground, but that's pretty much what it's broken down into. And 3 to 4 a year, that's 1 a quarter. So it's finding a new deal every couple months. So super doable, super doable.
How do you structure the partner, the team, like your project manager? Is that like a percentage? Is that like a salary? Is that like how does that look like?
I actually tried a lot of things with that. I used to do for the project manager like an hourly, and it was 20 bucks an hour. And then that was really hard to first keep track of because, like, okay, can you go and take pictures of this place? And like for me, it would take maybe 20 minutes. And then she said, oh, it took me an hour. It's like, okay, well, should I beat her up on that or should I just leave it as is? So that was part of it. And the other thing was like, okay, when I'm dealing with contractors and they text me and I text them back, like, how much time is that? Is that a minute? Is that 5 minutes? Is that 30 minutes?
Yeah,
What do you
yeah.
count that as? So the hourly never really worked for me. There's just like a lot of things that I just got paranoid, like, oh, is she really doing the work and all that stuff? Like, so okay, so the hourly didn't work, so then I switched to a flat fee. So I just do 2,000, 1,000 up front, 1,000 when it's done. And that's been working out because then if she spends 100 hours doing it, that's on her. If she spends 1 hour and she gets it, put together with minimal effort, then that's good too.
How'd
So
you
that's
come
what I've
up
been
with
doing.
2,000?
I don't know. I think we just talked about it and just that number made sense.
Oh, because you're a numbers guy. That's why I asked you. And you're an
Yeah.
engineer. So I was like, there's got to
Yeah.
be, it must have been calculated. Like, I'm curious. I'm just curious as to why that 2,000 made sense and not 3,000 or 4 or 1. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just curious.
I actually don't know. I have no clue. I don't know where that number came from, but it just made a lot of sense. Maybe I heard it from someone else and they were doing that.
Yeah. Well,
Which
this is
seems
what
like a good number.
this is what we do this, right? Because we're like, okay, well, either Victor said he does 2,000 for X reason, or Victor did 2,000 and I'll try 2,000 and see if it works for me. And if it doesn't, adjust, course correct, right?
Right.
What would you say? I'm sorry, you were gonna ask them.
I was gonna say it seems to be working the 2,000. I think that's a fair, fair
Yeah.
price, and haven't had any complaints.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Speaking of course correction, what's your biggest course correction that you've had in your business, in your time, going through the experiments, going through the journey? Is there one that comes to mind that, like, hindsight, you're like, oh, okay, I'm glad I pivoted and I started doing this differently?
Oh, there's a lot. There is a lot there. There's a lot there.
Let's go macro and micro. So at a
Okay,
macro level.
Let's do macro, Michael. So macro, I should have gotten started earlier. I had a mentor who said like 5-6 years ago, like, hey, you should get into this real estate. You should, because he made money flipping and then he went to the next thing.
Yeah.
Hey, you should get into real estate. I didn't listen. I did some other stuff. And then I got started 2.5 years ago, like the full time, like I guess 3 years ago. If you look at it from the exponential thing, because when you run these experiments, to use your language, like, it's not linear. It's not like, okay, the first month I'll make X, and the second month I'll make 2X. It's like, it is exponential. So it grows up.
Compound effect.
Yes, compounding, exactly. So for me, I did 2 flips the first year, 8 the next year, 20 last year, then 30 is this year's the goal. So it grows like that. So if I started, 5-6 years ago, I might be at like, I don't know, 40 or 50 a year. So that's probably the micro. Let's talk about, so that's micro. No, that's macro. What did I say?
Yeah, that's you said that. This is macro, where we're saying
That was
exponential
macro.
growth, getting started early. Now micro, kind of going into the details a little bit. Like, is there a thing like, man, we should have been using this system, man, I should have just, again, one of them, I think, at a micro level was the 2,000 up front, because you had the headache of like, how much time is it really? Then if I'm the project manager, I'm rounding up because I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get paid $5 for this. Like, I'm rounding up to an hour, right? So it seems that you figured that out. What are some other blind spots that someone listening that you might be able to call out for them going into this, if they're either thinking of doing them themselves or partnering out with someone else? What are some micro kind of course corrections that you feel were very monumental for kind of where you are right now in this journey?
Sure. So for the micro, I would call it micro. Like, I was doing the flips, and then during that time, I was like, let me also do some BRRRR deals. So BRRRR is like buy, rent, buy, renovate, rent, refinance. That's what a BRRRR deal is. And this was years ago when I was getting started. My credit wasn't too good, so I was gonna do with a partner, and that's what I did. We're gonna go 50-50. And I should have like started with the end in mind. Like, I should have ran the numbers and like see, okay, if this is our end result, like this is going to be our intended end result, like, am I going to be happy with that? And I should have ran that, because we did like, I think we did like maybe a dozen BRRRR deals. And then we realized, so it was me and a partner 50-50. So I was going to like find the deal, run it, just that typical situation. And like at the end of all this work, like 6 months work, sourcing a deal, renovating it, renting it out, managing the rent, like all those different things, like we were making a $300 a month cash flow. So you might say, oh, $300 a month, that's not bad. But then it was two of us, right? 50-50. So I got $150 a month.
For all that
And
work.
that's if everything, exactly, after all that work. And that's if everything went well. Like, what if there's a vacancy? What if something breaks? What if, someone's late? So that was if everything went well, $150. So we basically stopped doing the burrs. So there's nothing wrong with burrs. I recommend like you do the burrs on your own, because $300 a month on your own changes kind of changes it in your favor. So that was pretty much it. So I wish I didn't do that. But again, it's part of the learning process. But just thinking through it in entirety, be like, hey, am I going to be happy with this after 4 months of work? Blank, blank, blank. Make sure it's a fit.
Starting with the end in mind is so hard for people sometimes, or if you just don't think about it, because this is a very different way of thinking, right? I think I have a book here, that Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David talks about. Have you heard of it?
I haven't. No, I've heard of the guy.
Yeah, Patrick Bet-David is a good guy. Has been obviously a savvy entrepreneur, but you start for us to start thinking like a chess players, right? It's not checkers. You got to be 12 moves ahead.
Yeah.
And had you done that, you would have been able to see that this is not, feasible, sustainable, etc. But because you're in the lab, I got, I am looking at our time here, and I gotta respect it. But you came in here and dropped a lot of gems. But I gotta ask you this: did you spend some time in the short-term rental space as well?
A little bit, yeah. We did a little bit of that.
Why did you step away? I'm just curious. You gotta let us know, because we have a lot of that in the lab. I'm curious.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with short-term rentals. You just got to realize like what all your costs are, and we didn't know that going into it, so we kind of under budgeted, especially furniture. Like, I was surprised how much furniture costs. I was pleasantly surprised, or not pleasantly, but I was surprised.
You were very unpleasant.
Unpleasantly surprised. So we didn't like bake that into our numbers. Didn't have money for it. I'm open to doing short-term rentals in the future, but it was just one of those things. Like we budgeted X, and it was like X. Like we were going to get like professionally staged and like professional furniture in there, and that's going to be like 13 grand. And I'm sure you can do it cheaper. You can probably get like for 5 grand to 13 grand. This is like a 5-bedroom place. But it was just one of those things we didn't budget for, so it kind of messed us up. And we just realized, like, let's just flip this thing, and like, let's just continue doing the flips. But there's nothing wrong with short-term rentals. I mean, I have a lot of respect for it. The biggest thing I'd say, with my limited experience, and you probably know more about this, location is probably number one. Like, you gotta have a good spot. Like a really, really good spot
you do your research. I mean, kind of like anything else, anything that you do in real estate, you can, with the end in mind, and where up front you do it first. You don't take the property, then the numbers, you actually pick the location first. And then one thing that's interesting is actually we buy ours furnished. So we just closed on one where there's like 4 flat screens, furnished, everything.
Wow.
I filter. People don't filter. Here's a little gem for you guys. You guys know this if you listen to my episode 92 with Michael. Actually, no, I didn't tell about this with Michael Shogun. Michael Shogun was giving us the game, but I've been preaching about it. You can filter for furnished homes if you have a realtor or whatever. I have my license, so I used to filter for myself, and we found several. One we had to back out on. It had everything. Because of it was in the flood zone, but it was fully furnished. Technology, like everything, like even the automated, like the door, the literally the keypads and everything were already pre-installed. We just changed the account, so it was literally turnkey. That's what we do. Or you got to factor it in. But it's interesting that I just wanted to understand what it was, and that's exactly what it is. You got to look at the numbers up front, make sure it makes sense. But that's awesome, man. So look, you came here, you gave us game. What I liked about you, Victor, is that, obviously you went through the kind of transition into what most people are going into as they're going through their journey. And I like that you're narrowed in and so narrowed in on flipping, properties and homes, and that you've really niched in it and you're really good in it, and now you're refining, and that's the way you're able to find the exponential growth. Sometimes if we diversify a little bit too much before we've built that moat, we don't really get anywhere. So now that you've done that, you're actually also starting to help others with the 6-figure house flipper, which you told us 3 homes. That's interesting, 3 to 4 homes. So can you tell us a little bit about to our listeners a little bit about what that is like, what it is that you're bringing to the table for these six-figure flippers, members that you're kind of helping coach.
Yeah, sure. So I flip houses myself. I also mentor people nationwide how to flip houses. So I flip houses mostly locally here in Gainesville. But then I can help people if you're in New York or if you're in Texas or Kentucky, I can help you out. And I mean, we're not competitive, so that's pretty nice to have that sort of help. I help people like how do you get the money, how do you get the deals, how do you get your first deal and then the six figures. So I help every step of the way, A to Z. It's kind of like a hands-on mentorship, if you want to think of it that way.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty much it. So just help folks. It's really fun. Like for me to do, let's say I don't do 30 flips, but 31 flips, like that's cool. That's awesome. But to help someone go from 0 to 1, like that's really changing their life, and that's changing them for the better, because then they can, do more deals, and they can, add that money to their bank account, all that good stuff. So it's really cool to like give back and really help other people out.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is fulfilling too. You get to a point where you've done it yourself. You're like, man, like, the conversation that I have about like short-term rentals with people, I'm like, dude, you got to look at these numbers. It's because you want to share and you want to win with others. So where can we find out more about, if someone's listening, they want to join Six-Figure House Flipper, is it a mastermind? Is that what it is?
So I have a free Facebook group. Yeah, no.
Okay, cool.
So it's a free Facebook group. So if you guys want to join, if you look up Six-Figure House Flipper, I'm there. Or if you want to look up my name too, you'll be able to find it that way. Just Viktor Jiracek, and that's pretty much it. And then folks, there's a lot of great tips and resources, and I do like deal breakdowns. Like, hey, this is the deal I bought. This is how much I made. Break down everything, and just everything I use is accessible for folks there.
Absolutely. If you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. We'll include that in the show notes for sure. Behave. But you today listen to Viktor Jiracek, who was really Jiracek, excuse me. I was thinking of like Pete Maravich or something. That's the player.
I don't know.
No, that's like Pistol Pete is what they used to call him. So that's why I butchered that. So Jiracek, Viktor Jiracek. And you guys want to make sure you check out the Six-Figure House Flipper Facebook group where you'll tap into what the incredible experiments he's doing in the flipping space. And I really appreciate you coming in and giving us the game and being able to also share with us your story, man, of how you got there. I think it's really important for people to see people like they feel it can be like them. You're 27, you're young, you're crushing it, and you started, and you even told us you wish you would have started earlier. So don't hold back. Start now. Follow the experiment. And just like that, Viktor, I want to thank you for coming in here. And just like that, we are out.